And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again for episode 333 from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Well, Peter, you already said that you're steering the ship, so I'm going to let you play captain and take us on a sail through the world of MMA. What's on tap? What are we steering toward first?
Well, we got news, we got a few fights to talk about, and we've got Bellator and UFC to talk about. But Stevie, episode 333. Never thought I'd see the day.
Dude, I've had over 500 episodes of Thursday Night AMP, so 300 really isn't anything to me at this point.
I was there for a few of those. I was there for a cup of coffee.
More than a cup.
More than a cup, that's true. All right, well, let's start with the news here. There's a little bit of news to touch on before we talk about what fights have been announced. And the first one is Tali's Ladies, after his fight this past weekend. He wants to fight Krzysztof Joko.
Yeah, I think that's a quality matchup.
Now, is that a prelim, or is that the first fight of a main card?
I think you could put that somewhere in the upper portion. I wouldn't put it down on Fight Pass or anything.
No, I would say that could main event a prelim card if it was like a pay-per-view, but if it's a fight night or a UFC on Fox show, you could put that fight on the main card.
I think you're right.
Bad news for Tom Breeze as he has a torn ACL.
Yeah, that is uncomfortable. That'll put you on the shelf for a while.
Yeah, we're not talking 1 to 2 months here.
No, I had one, and it was at least 3 months before I could even unlock the brace.
Jesus. Let's talk briefly about Bellator. They have signed a new fighter, someone familiar to the show, Valerie Letourneau.
Yeah, that's not really surprising.
No, what is surprising is McFarlane has already said she wants to fight Letourneau for the first fight for the Bellator featherweight or flyweight title.
Right. Well, she's been looking for somebody to face her, somebody with more experience, and Colleen Schneider was campaigning for her, and she was kind of campaigning for Colleen, but I guess it'll be Letourneau instead.
The only thing I would say to McFarlane about that, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, well, she went out there and had a statement fight. I know we're not talking about the card just yet, but I think she proved that she's ready for tougher competition.
Well, Letourneau will definitely bring the fight, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Now, UFC, there's a show on their Fight Pass channel. I love when like WWE Network and UFC Fight Pass have some original programming, and it's different than the normal stuff you see out there. Like, this is like some stuff that peel back the curtain a little bit.
Mm-hmm. There's
a show called The Exchange, and it's a one-on-one sit-down interview type show, and Dana White was the guest. And they're talking about the acquisition that just happened with UFC and their new owners.
Right.
And
may I briefly interject? Megan
Absolutely.
O'Leary is the host of this show, but go on.
Mm-hmm. The UFC had a couple of options on the table, and there was one that was offering $5 billion with a B for the UFC, and they turned it down because they didn't believe in the company's vision, long-term plans, if they were able to acquire the UFC.
I will read you the exact quote from The Exchange because this story was on MMA Mania today. Here's what Dana White said. I was never in this for the money ever. When we bought this thing, we bought it for $2 million, and then we were upside down and everything else. For me, it's always taking it to the next level. Let me be honest with you. When we were doing this deal, there were two groups that came in for more money than Ari. There was one for $5 billion. Ari is one of these guys. He's got huge balls. He's very smart, and he laid out a great plan for the sport. The vision that Ari has right now, I am on board. I love it.
No, it's staggering to see how much money was left on the table here.
If they left $1 billion on the table, they had a damn good reason. But this could, of course, just be bluster. We don't know this. Nobody has ever revealed that there was a $5 billion offer. It's not like Ariel Helwani has put out a story saying that.
No, but I mean, how many people are going to be in the room with that decision's being made?
Well, there were enough people that weren't in the room that knew what was going on that everybody knew a sale was going on, even when Dana White flat out denied that there was a sale.
Yeah, but we've talked about what Dana White says sometimes on this show. He flat out denies it, like Conor and Money. And the next he's praising, well, who would win in the fight? It's like, wait, weren't you just saying, you know what? Never mind.
Dana plays a game where he only reveals what he wants to reveal, and only when UFC has already confirmed it themselves.
I know one thing. I do not want to play poker with Dana White.
No, he's very good at bluffing.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got a pair of aces or a pair of twos.
And what he really gets mad at is when somebody calls his bluff and they're right, because that's how that whole situation with MMA fighting getting their credentials revoked for a little while happened.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the new fights been announced this week, there is a big one we're going to save for the last one here. I'm just going to move that down on my sheet. Let's start with, in addition to UFC Fight Night 109 in Sweden on May 28th, it's Darren Till against Jason Ayari.
I wish I could say I had a comment about that, but I don't.
I think Till could win that fight, but it's going to be a challenge for him, but I think Till's up for the challenge.
I think it'll be a challenge to get people interested.
I don't think it's the main event, obviously,
No.
but I'm not going to say.
No, not even.
Luan Chagas fights Jim Wallhead, UFC 212 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June the 3rd.
This is another one of those fights where I'm like, yeah, okay, at least I know Judo Jim Wallhead. At least he's got that going for him.
But that show in Rio, that's a show, if I was a fighter and they offered me a fight, I would just, without even knowing who I'm fighting, I'm citing the dotted line.
Of course.
That looks like it could be a show of the year.
Well, I think there are a lot of shows like that coming up, so, yeah.
In New Zealand, UFC Fight Night 110 on June the 10th, we have Warley Alves fighting Kichi Kunimoto.
I like that fight, but again, I don't know if that moves the needle.
No. As far as UFC, the one more fight's been announced, and that's UFC at the Tough 25 finale in Vegas on July the 7th. Steve Boss against Jared Cannonier.
I thought Boss was done. I thought he... Am I mistaken about that?
You are. This fight was just announced.
Wow. I thought he basically said I had proved my point UFC and now I'm good. I didn't realize he was sticking around.
I mean, I think money talks, and if they gave him a good fight that he thinks that he can win, or he wants to put on one more show, Jared is up for the challenge.
Well, that's an interesting fight, not just because it's more than I expected from the former hockey player, but it's his chance to crack into the top 15, because that's where Cannonier is right now, number 15.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about the rankings on that one. Yeah, that's definitely, wow, Steve Boss, UFC top 15.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of marveling at this whole idea.
All right, so we have two fights updated for Bellator 180. One is on the prelims. Aaron Pico fights Zach Freeman.
No, that's not a preliminary fight.
Oh, it's not the prelims? I thought I read that as prelims.
That is a pay-per-view fight.
Oh, even better.
They're giving Aaron Pico, in his pro debut, a pay-per-view slot and a guy who is 8-2.
Ooh. Oh, that's not good. I mean, for a debut fight, that's not good.
They have high expectations for Pico to take this fight with this opponent because, I mean, okay, on paper, Freeman's lost 2 of his last 3, and you might think he's ripe for the picking, but one of those 3 fights was a 5-round title fight in RFA. So, it's not like he was out there fighting scrubs to get to 8-2. And if he lost a 5-round title fight, he still was in it for 5 rounds, which means he's pretty good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the main event of the fights announced this week. Now, there was a scheduled fight between King Mo and Ryan Bader. I think this was on a pay-per-view slot. The fight was changed because King Mo is down, I believe, with an injury.
Correct.
So they've replaced him with Phil Davis. The fight everybody wanted.
Mr. Wonderful is defending the title against Bader on the main portion of the Spike TV broadcast. Now, this show on June 24th breaks down into 3 portions. There is a preliminary card, which only airs on Spike.com. There is what they're calling the Bellator 180 card, which is headlined by Phil Davis versus Ryan Bader. That's Spike TV. And then the pay-per-view card that airs afterwards is called Bellator NYC. And that's your Chael Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva.
But this is...
It's a pay-per-view worthy fight, but they're using it to lure people into the pay-per-view.
I feel like this one is... You've heard the expression license to print money.
Mm-hmm.
This is the opposite of that.
License to throw away money?
Yes. Because as you said, is a pay-per-view fight. Why, I understand they want to have a main event fight on the Spike TV broadcast, but a title fight with these two guys? No, that's too much of a commodity. No, you don't have that fight for free TV.
But you also have to look at it not from the money-making perspective, but from the fighter's perspective. They all want to be on this card. They all want to be at Madison Square Garden. These guys are actually willing to take what might be a potential live gate and make that, like part of their stipulations for their contract, because just to be on the Madison Square Garden card is worth whatever trade-offs there might be, at least to them.
But 2 fights on that pay-per-view card might not even happen.
That's
You're taking
true.
a big, big gamble here.
But you're also just outlining the very reason to do this. Let's say that the Sonnen Silva fight falls through. Let's say that the Fedor Mitrione fight falls through.
What's left?
You got a Spike TV main event. You can move up to pay-per-view. That's exactly why you do this. You're hedging your bets. Peter, this is actually a brilliant move on their part.
Okay. Now, to borrow a phrase from a former guest on this show, what are the Todd's odds that one of those 2 big fights on pay-per-view gets scratched?
Oh, I think there's every chance in the world that Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva are not going to be able to pass their medical testing. Now, Sonnen, he got cleared for his fight back in January with Tito Ortiz, so he's probably safe to get cleared again. But Wanderlei, I would put big question marks on that. Who knows, after his long suspension and the very aggressive way that he's trained and fought over the years, if it's taken enough of a toll that he can even be medically cleared. We have to wait and see.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here just for a second, Steve, or a Neville's advocate, if you will. But what state is this in again?
New York, and they are known to disqualify people for brain scans.
Breast implants.
And other assorted things. So, you know what? There is every chance that this fight could fall through, or 2 of the fights on the main card could fall through. So again, hedge your bets by having Phil Davis versus Ryan Bader, if you need it, to move up to pay-per-view.
Now, if this fight, one of these fights, if it's Fedor, Mitrione, or Sonnen and Silva, if one of those fights gets scratched because the commission would not let the fight take place, it's not like Bellator has had a show, on an Indian casino, where certain commission rules don't really apply.
I don't think we're gonna see an outlaw show, if that's what you're proposing.
Not so much an outlaw show, but certain commissions are more, lenient on certain aspects.
Might you be casting aspersions on a certain Lone Star state way, way south of you?
Deep in the heart of Texas.
I wasn't going to name names, but you just did. No, I would actually be more worried if Kerry Hatley was the referee for any of these fights. That would be more of a concern.
If you're going to do that, you might as well make Cecil Peoples one of the judges.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now we're just setting up nightmare scenarios. Let's move on.
So Phil Davis, Ryan Bader, Bellator 180, the main TV card. That is the main fight that was announced this week.
Yep, but they did also add a Ryan Couture fight to the prelims, and they added Aaron Pico to the pay-per-view, so they got a few things going on.
Do you think Randy will corner his son in this fight?
I think the odds are pretty high of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this show. I think that if you are a casual fan, this is a show that you should go out of your way to watch because A, it's either going to be really good, it's going to surprise a lot of people, or it's going to be a train wreck. Either way, we're in for some entertainment.
Yeah, it's going to be a memorable card. I've already had people asking me if I'm going to New York, and I don't have the travel budget for that. I'm sorry. I'd like to, but it's not in the cards.
Well, what is in the cards is what happened in Bellator at Bellator 178. Patricio Pitbull Freire against Daniel Strauss for the title, and this fight did not go to the judges.
I was flummoxed, to be honest with you.
Flummoxed?
Yeah, the last time Strauss and Pitbull fought, Strauss was so aggressive and so dominant that I thought even after a year layoff, there was no way he was letting this title get away from him. And yet, in that first round, he had, I don't know, he was a bigger guy, he's the stronger guy, he theoretically should be able to dominate him in any exchange just like he did in the last fight, and yet Pitbull was so quick on his feet that he was tagging Strauss and getting out of the way, and Strauss could not do anything to him, and I gave that round 10-9 to Pitbull, and then it got worse. Why don't you tell him what happened in the second round?
Well, he got a guillotine choke on him early. And we're talking less than a minute early. In fact, he tapped out at 37 seconds of the second round.
Well, what's interesting about the choke, which he didn't even say, is that he had it, and it wasn't looking like Strauss was going to submit to it, and then he basically jumped up all the way onto his back and made Strauss carry all his weight as he was pulling down on the guillotine at the same time. And that's when Strauss was fucked.
The timing of it was pretty good, but I honestly thought that before, you're right, I thought the guillotine choke was a good plan, but it's like, it's not looking like it's going to stop him.
But once he jumped up on Strauss and got all his weight on Strauss, that was bad news.
That was sneaky, that's for sure.
That was like slick shit. That was, you know what? I was looking at Pitbull in a whole new light after that. I was like, you know what? This guy might just be the featherweight champion for another 2 years after beating Strauss that one-sidedly.
So it's now what, 3-1?
Yeah, that's 3 out of 4 times now he's beat Strauss. The only time that Strauss won was the last time when he got the title.
Now, I don't want to see a fifth one, do you?
I kind of think it might be a moot point. I don't really think you can, unless Strauss just goes on an incredible tear. And let's not take anything away. Daniel Strauss is a 2-time featherweight champion now, so there's no reason he couldn't be a 3-time at some point. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But I'm thinking if Pitbull is still the champion and Strauss is the challenger, then Strauss has to just have like a 3, 4, 5 fight win streak and really, really cement it, because you're not going to do that fight again after Pitbull beat him 3 out of 4 times unless Strauss just levels all the competition in front of him. But if Pitbull loses that title, that's a whole new ballgame.
I was thinking if Strauss made the jump to UFC, say he lost his next fight or two, and, Bellator decides they can, they'll move on. If he makes the jump to UFC, there's some interesting matchups as well that are very tempting. So Bellator would be of the right mind to, keep Strauss in their lineup. That's a dangerous fighter there.
I think you can say that for much of either featherweight division, that if any guy from either one jumps to the other organization, there's immediate fights that are intriguing to watch. There's no shortage of talent depth in both the UFC and Bellator featherweight pool. They are deep.
Yeah, they're deep, and I'm sure there's a few featherweights itching to join one of the two promotions as well. It's that deep.
Yeah, there's everybody trying to knock on the door and get in, but there's only so many slots, so regional circuit is what a lot of people have to do.
Now, why don't you talk about the co-main event for the women's featherweight matchup?
Yes, we had Alimale McFarlane taking on Jessica Middleton, and I did an interview with Alimale, and she made it very clear before the fight took place that she was not in any way looking past Jessica Middleton. She talked about how tough she was, how she had performed well in Bellator, but once the fight actually took place, you could kind of see that she may not have been looking past Jessica Middleton, but she was definitely looking to bulldoze through Jessica Middleton, because She did everything that she wanted to do to Middleton in this fight, including taking her down, controlling her on the ground, jumping to the armbar, hanging on to it while Jessica Middleton squirmed around like a fish flopping out of water. And then once Alimale made, as she's famously said to me in interviews, she made one little change, and that was when she tucked the arm underneath her armpit and laid back with it as hard as she could with that arm trapped. And that was too much for Middleton. She had to tap.
Somebody I know texted me asking about this fight, and I just wrote back, armbar.
You know what? She compared herself to Miesha Tate the last time I talked to her. Now people are going to start comparing her to Ronda Rousey because she's 6-0, she's undefeated, and she just laid down a sweet armbar on her opponent.
2 minutes and 15 seconds the official time. Let's move on to the catchweight fight at 165, Saad Awad and Ryan Quinn.
This was another fight where I interviewed Saad, and he said that he wasn't looking past Ryan Quinn. And with good reason, too, because before this fight, Quinn was actually undefeated in Bellator. He was one of those beneath-the-radar guys because he'd had a lot of his fights on the prelims, and he'd had fights outside of Bellator between. So you might not have noticed that he was actually 7-0 in Bellator, but he was. Now he's 7-1.
No shame in losing to Saad, though.
No, and this was, I mean, it looks dominant when you look at the scorecards and they read 30-27 across the board. Mm-hmm. But what happened here was that Quinn was trying to go for takedowns and trying to control Saad on the ground. And that strategy would backfire because Quinn would get him off his feet, but Saad was so strong off his back that he'd sweep and get him out and start raining down ground and pound.
No real surprise here, but a good win for Saad. The only thing that worried me was the catchweight for 165. I always cringe when I hear catchweight fights.
Well, he told me that in the interview and said that it was because he was between welterweight and lightweight because he had been welterweight for his last fight. So he and Quinn had both made the decision, let's not try to cut all the way down to lightweight and be stupid about it. We can always do that later.
Well, let's move on to the featherweight fight, AJ McKee and Dominic Mazzotta.
You know, I'd say 3 out of the 4 fights on this main card were statement fights. Now, the Alimale fight definitely was, because she wants to fight for the inaugural flyweight title. And the Pitbull one was, because that's 3 out of 4 times. Now, this one definitely is, because a lot of people, including Daniel Strauss, said AJ McKee hasn't really fought anybody. What is he talking about title shots for? He's not anywhere near in line. And yet, McKee, after 2 fights where he didn't look like the world was going to be his oyster, now it's all pearls because he hit a sweet head kick on Dominic Mazzotta. And this guy was not a scrub. This guy was like a 10-fight veteran with plenty of experience, and his only other loss had been to Cody Garbrandt. And all of a sudden, AJ McKee just levels him with a head kick and walks away like, okay, now you can put me in the contenders picture. I'm legit. If you didn't already know, now you know.
It's like, I'll show you, you'll see. And it was off to the races.
Yeah. Now, there's no looking back from this point on. I mean, if he's not fighting for the title, he's fighting a guy like Emmanuel Sanchez or Daniel Weichel. He's going to get nothing.
Weichel.
He's getting nothing but tough competition from this point on.
The Weichel fight might be too much for him. I don't know. I don't know.
At this point, though, that's your only option. You cannot go backwards with this guy after a performance like that.
Yeah, I just...
But it's okay. Don't worry about Weichel, because Weichel's going to be challenging Pitbull again.
Oh, God, again?
Yeah, well, he is basically the number 1 contender right now after the fight with John Teixeira, so...
All right, so I got a point there. As far as the prelims are concerned, was there anything on there that caught your eye, or should we move on?
Let me see. Blair Tugman got a pretty nice rear naked choke very late in his fight with Tom English, like 6 seconds left to go. So I got a kick out of that, just seeing the heart and the perseverance that he was going to finish that fight no matter what. And we had Ed Ruth TKOing David Mundell about 3 minutes, 13 seconds into the second round of a welterweight fight, and he's one of their blue chip prospects that they've really banked on to be a star of the future. So you keep an eye on a guy like that. And Tyrell Fortune, same deal in the heavyweight division. He had a longer fight. It didn't go to a finish, but it went to a unanimous decision, although he got a 1-point deduction for a kick to the cup. So it doesn't look as impressive as it could be when you read the scorecards, but he still won the fight handily. And he won it against an unknown, unheralded guy who turns out to be the son of Bully Busick.
Why does that name sound familiar?
WWF jobber.
Ah, yes. I was wondering what that name sounded familiar. Did you mention the Jordan Young-Tim Karen fight?
No, but there was a pretty nice Darce choke in that fight to finish it for Jordan Young.
And you know how much of a fan I am of the slick submissions, and Darce choke is right up there.
Well, there's an even slicker submission on the UFC card, and we're going to get to that shortly.
Oh yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let's go right to UFC Fight Night 108. The main event saw Artem Lobov try to beat Cub Swanson. Spoiler, he didn't.
No. The odds said that he wouldn't. The odds were not wrong, but the one thing the odds did not say, and that maybe we should have said, is that Artem Lobov, for the mediocre record that he has, is tough as fucking shit.
Yeah.
I mean, Cub Swanson literally hit him with everything in the kitchen sink. I mean, he was throwing head kicks and cartwheel kicks and jabs and back fists. No matter what he hit this guy with, and he hit him with a hell of a lot, he could not put Artem Lobov down. That guy just kept coming.
And this fight went all 5 rounds.
But you know what? It never got boring, because at any point you were thinking, oh my God, Cub Swanson's going to finally land the kill shot. And he never did, and you kept waiting for it, so it kept you on the edge of your seat.
It did, and it was one of those interesting announcers. The announcer combo for this was Todd Grisham and Brian Stan. Still
getting used to the idea of Todd Grisham calling UFC. It's still a little weird.
Still a little weird, but I kind of liked it with Stan.
I think they're a good combo. I don't know if they're going to be right up there with Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan, but they're okay.
They're good for a fight night crew. They're pretty good.
But how weird is it now that we're talking about Mike Goldberg potentially going to WWE and Todd Grisham is calling UFC? Does it feel like we're living in a parallel universe or something?
Well, I mean, look at it last year at this time when you talk about Mauro Ranallo signing with WWE. So,
well, that didn't pan out.
Okay, well, yeah, that's true, but you know what I'm saying. It's
yeah, I know what you're saying. But speaking of knowing what you're saying, Iaquinta had a lot to say. Holy cow.
Okay, well, let's talk about what happened in the fight first before.
Yeah, he leveled Diego Sanchez. I mean, to the point where I thought maybe this really should be the swan song for Diego. I'm not sure I want him to take another fight after the way he got clobbered.
He, lasted what, a minute 38?
Yeah, 98 seconds. That's it.
And he crumpled.
Yeah, this was one of those where it's in the fighter's best interest for him to be told not to fight. This is like Dana White having the come to Jesus meeting with Chuck Liddell. And Diego has been around for long enough that I think he should know that by now too.
Yes, I'm not going to deny that. That's for sure.
And then Iaquinta went full heel on the crowd in Nashville.
Oh, there's going heel, and then there's doing what he did, basically saying, and I quote, "Fuck UFC," which I'm like, they pay your bill.
Fuck UFC, fuck Dana White, fuck you Nashville. Who didn't he tell to fuck off? This was raging Iaquinta at his most raging.
Someone said it's Raging Bull. All that was missing was Hakpatui. You know, that's all it was missing.
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed it, though. I got a kick out of it. To me, it's more fun when Iaquinta just says F you to everybody. I love it.
The last thing I remember as much heat as this got was when, I'm going to bring it back a little bit, when Kenny Florian was fighting in Vancouver. And it was during the Vancouver Canucks Stanley Cup run.
When he came out wearing the Bruins hockey jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
It was nuclear heat.
It was pretty, I wouldn't say this is comparable, but it's similar.
It's in the ballpark.
Ballpark, but not the biggest venue of the ballpark. It's like minor league compared to the heat that got.
But that was, I wonder, do you punish Iaquinta for this comment, or do you give him a match that he might win? I mean,
honestly, his punishment was not getting a fight bonus, so that's, you know what, everybody else that got one that deserved one, kudos to them, but Iaquinta probably deserved one too, and he didn't get it.
If this was the only knockout, he might have gotten it.
Yeah, but he had a lot of competition here.
He did. Speaking of competition, OSP, after his last fight, was looking for some, and he made short work of Marcos Rodrigo de Lima. Rogério.
Well, two things to note. First of all, Rogério missed weight. This guy has a problem with making the weight, so this was actually a catch weight of 210 pounds. Second thing to note is there have only been 3 Von Flue chokes in the recorded history of professional fighting, not amateur, not jiu-jitsu competition, actual recorded fights that you would find on SureDog, and 2 of those 3 belong to Ovince St. Preux because he finished Rogério with the Von Flue choke at 2 minutes and 11 seconds of the second round.
Well, I'm trying it again. He started going for it, and I was like, he's not going to go for it. Oh shit, he is. Yeah. All right, cool.
And that's why his teammates are now calling him Ovince Von Flue St. Preux.
Fits. It definitely fits. And
he needed this win. He needed to reestablish himself, and he did. That was,
to use your word from before, this is a very slick submission.
It was very slick, and it got a great reaction too, because he's the Nashville kid, so this crowd ate it up.
Mm-hmm. And who would you put in front of him next?
Well, he was number 8, so let's see where the rankings shake out, because you gotta give him somebody above him at this point. You can't, unless you get one of those situations where you get a Cub Swanson and he has nobody to fight, so he's gonna fight Artem Lobov just to stay busy. But that was a very risky decision on Cub's part, and I don't know that Ovince wants to take a stay busy fight, because he had one of those and he lost.
Exactly. So, I mean, at 205, I mean, that's a very interesting top 10 you have there. It's a very motley crew.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and of course we got John Jones coming back at any time, so it's only going to get more interesting.
I think Jones needs a tune-up fight. Let's have him fight OSP.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't disagree with you, but I don't know that that's a good idea for OSP.
I don't think Jones wants that fight either.
Yeah, that's actually probably a bigger risk for Jones to get upset, you know, as opposed to if he's going to get upset, he might as well go for somebody right at the top.
Maybe the Mauler?
Maybe. But let's stop speculating. We got more of this card to talk about.
True. John Dodson against Eddie Wineland. Oh boy.
You know what? This was the fight where I was like, fuck it. It's beer time. I was perfectly fine with this card up to this point, and middle of the first round, I was like, nope, I'm going to need a beer to get through this.
It was interesting because the crowd, let's just say, wasn't very, entertained. I think Dodson even called the crowd inebriated.
No, if they were inebriated, they would have cared more. When they did care, they booed. They did not really care for this at all.
I just saw that, and it was 30-27, 30-27, 29-28, so paint by numbers win for Dodson here. Although Wineland, I thought, would give him more of a fight.
Yeah, it looked more like the Eddie Wineland that a couple years ago I thought, maybe this guy is done, maybe he's past it, and he went on a few fight win streak with some quality wins, and then I was like, okay, gotta reconsider now. Eddie Wineland is still relevant, and then John Dodson just basically showed, nope, not at this point. I mean, it's unfortunate because Dodson fought a quality fight, and he fought a quality fighter. It just was so repetitive that it was hard to get excited about it. It was like, punch, repeat, move, counter, dance, punch, repeat. There was never a knockout blow. There was never a moment of danger. And there was never a point where Eddie Wineland came roaring back with a huge comeback where I thought, okay, he's going to turn this around and make a fight out of it. It was just 15 minutes of the same thing.
The thing is, do you think Dodson was trying to play it too safe?
I don't know. Look, John Dodson has some serious power in his hands. I mean, especially for a guy who fights at 125 and 135, he's got the tools to drop people. I've seen him do it.
He does have the power, but I think Wineland, I hate saying it, but is he back to being a Jekyll and Hyde fighter?
I think so. And I think
that sucks. That's a bad label to put on him, though. He's such a good talent, though.
I think what we really have here is a case of, sometimes styles make fights and sometimes styles don't. And Dodson, with the right opponent who wants to just stand there in the pocket with him, you're going to get a knockout. Either Dodson's going to get it or he's going to go down like hell trying. But Eddie Wineland was trying to be strategic and Dodson was trying to give chase, and it just didn't work out to be a super thrilling fight. But on a card where a lot of fights were really good, I guess one dud is okay. It didn't kill the show.
What about Stevie Ray and Joe Lozon?
Well, I tip my hat to you, Peter, because you predicted that Stevie Ray was going to have basically his best performance of his career to date and proved that he belonged at this level in UFC. And he even said so himself in his post-fight interview. He was like, listen, I know you guys haven't seen me before. I've been fighting in Europe. I've been fighting on all these other cards, but thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And you're a wonderful audience. And thank you. I really enjoyed this fight. And let me take my head off to Joe Lozon. He's a great fighter. This was like the opposite of Al Iaquinta's promo. Instead of screw you, screw Nashville, screw Dana White, it was like, I love you guys. I want to fight in the USA. Hey, it's good to be here.
You probably saw him backstage and said, no, this is how you do a promo. Watch my fight.
Right.
Hold my beer.
But yeah, I really liked what Stevie Ray did in this fight, both during and after. Yeah. Now, it was weird because it actually ends up being a majority decision.
That's the way to do it. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a majority decision. Okay, it wasn't a finish. It wasn't a submission, anything like that. But this fight will get him another good fight.
It was actually a 10-8 first round for Lozon. And then...
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, and then 2 10-9 rounds, in my estimation, when I scored it. So I would have scored it a draw. But because Stevie Ray just really turned it on in the third round, 2 of the judges actually gave it a 10-8 in the third. So that's how he wins by majority decision, because one judge scored it like I did, and 2 others gave a 10-9 and a 10-8 to Stevie Ray in the second and the third.
Well, I mean, if that's what happened, then a 10-8 and an 8-10.
Yeah, those two canceled each other out, but it's the 10-9 that makes the difference. So
I'm glad I saw the second round then.
Yeah, so Stevie Ray is your winner because of that.
All right, let's move on to the welterweight fight between Mike Perry and Jake Ellenberger. And Stevie, what happened here?
Well, if you hear Mike Perry tell it, he decided to ruin Jake Ellenberger's life. That's the promo he cut after this fight. And I didn't think that was very appropriate, considering that the man he was talking about was laying on the canvas being given oxygen.
Yeah, it was one of those elbows that
when he said, whose life do you want me to ruin in his post-fight interview, I was thinking, you just ruined a life. Don't say that, because Jake Ellenberger is never going to be the same again. That legitimately could be a fight-ending knockout. That could end his career the way...
Career-ending knockout, yeah.
Yeah, the way he went... He didn't just fall from this. He went completely lights out, cold, stiff as a board. Medical assistance was required. This was not pretty.
So, in 2017, in April, we could have seen the final fight of Diego Sanchez and Jake Ellenberger in the UFC, or even their careers, in fact.
Of the two, I'm actually more concerned about Ellenberger, because Diego's been around for so long that who even knows with him? It may just be that he fights forever because he just won't quit and his body doesn't know how to quit.
No.
But with Ellenberger getting the number of brutal knockouts he's had in a row, and this one being the most brutal out of all of them, oh, I don't know about him fighting again after this one.
That is, I think he'll become a coach. He still has a lot to give to the sport, just not in a fighting capacity.
I would feel really bad if he took another fight and got knocked out again like this.
If he does, he's entering Pelver territory.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
That's like the Mendoza line in baseball. You don't want to go there.
No.
Now, as far as the prelims are concerned, we had a technical submission with Brandon Moreno and Dustin Ortiz.
All right. Well, I missed the prelims, so you'll have to tell me about that.
Rear naked choke. Technical submission, aka he didn't tap out.
Wow. Well, that's a interesting situation to be in for Moreno, because, you know what? I'm sure he would have rather that Dustin Ortiz tapped.
Tally's Ladies beat Sam Alvey with a unanimous decision, 3-0. Holtzman beat McBride, 30-27, 30-27, 30-26. And Danielle Taylor beat Jessica Penne, 29-28 across the board.
Wow. This is a big backslide for Jessica Penne.
Yeah. That surprised me when I saw that. And as far as the Fight Pass prelims, Alexis Davis beating Cindy Dandois, unanimous decision, 2-1. That was the last decision we saw that was the first decision we saw, I should say, because we had two finishes on the other Fight Pass fights. We had Brian Barberina beating Joe Proctor. Joe Proctor on a Fight Pass prelim, and he loses at 3:30 of the first round via TKO.
Well, I did tell you not to sleep on Barberina.
Proctor I thought would come out with more fire than that.
Barberina, you just weren't giving him enough credit. You probably saw the fight with Sage Northcutt and you were like, okay, he beat Sage Northcutt and Sage isn't that good. But Barberina actually is that good.
Well, maybe give him a fight on a main or at least higher up on the prelim card than Fight Pass.
Yeah, I think Barberina has earned a UFC on Fox or FS1 fight. I think you could give him either one of those.
Now, as far as the last fight, the first fight of the show was Hector Sandoval beating Matt Schnell, I should say. He knocked him out at 4:24.
Didn't see it, but I'm sure I'd like it.
And Hector Sandoval, that's a fighter, I think in your Brian Barberina example, it's another fighter we shouldn't sleep on either.
I agree.
So that's the Fight Night 108 show. That's the show this week. Stevie, we don't have any shows coming up in the next 2 weeks, so next week I might have to go into the toolbox here and pull out the list for the lineal champions to see who is the current champion and who is linear, and plus we've got
well, you know what? Next week we've got Combate America's show we could talk about.
We do. And we can also look at the amount of cuts the UFC has made in the last couple of months, because there have been quite the number as well.
Yes, so things to look forward to on our next edition. So